Hi, this is Kyle Battis from New Hampshire Strategic Marketing. And in this presentation, I'm going to be talking about the topic of, is your website holding your business back? Okay. And could your current website be costing you leads, sales, business, and profit? So let's dive right in and kind of show you what we got here. Okay. The hidden problem that we see a lot of business owners are facing is your website can look good, can look okay, but it could still be failing you. Okay. And that might be due to a bunch of different reasons. A slow load time, website speed matters, like how quickly your website loads for potential visitors and prospective customers is an important factor. Your website also might be failing you because it's got a low conversion rate. It doesn't do a good job, for whatever the reason may be, of convincing website visitors to take the next step to contact you. That might be due to, like, it wasn't set up, with that goal in mind. It might not have good calls to actions. It might not do a good enough job of explaining who you are, what you do, why somebody might choose you over somebody else. And there's a bunch of, it could have technical errors that are causing a low conversion rate. Another factor is you might have a high bounce rate, right? A bounce rate is like what when somebody comes to your website and then a high percentage of people are just like, I gotta get out of here. Like, I'm not finding what I'm looking for. I'm not sure if I want to work with these guys. I'm gonna get out of here. When Google sees that people come to your website but then quickly get out of there, that's an indication to Google that they're not finding what they're looking for, and that's why they're leaving and going elsewhere. They're hitting the back button and going there. And you've done that. You've done a search, you clicked over to a web listing, you were hopeful it was going to give you the information you needed, but then ultimately when you looked around, you're like, this is not what I need, or these guys aren't the right fit for me. I'm going to hit the back button, right? So when you have a high bounce rate, that's usually an indication that your website's failing you. Okay. Another reason that your website may be failing you, especially if you're running paid advertising, either on Google or Facebook or some other platform, if over time your ad spend is going up, but you're not getting more leads and customers, that may be a sign that your website's failing you. And we've seen this, in countless different ways. We just found this for a prospective client. They're a client of ours now. We were doing an audit for them, and we discovered during the audit presentation that they were spending they're pretty decent money, a couple grand a month on their Google advertising campaign. But the page on their website that they were driving the majority of the traffic to, over 50% of the traffic was going to this singular page. That page had broken images on it, had a security warning on it, okay? And the main call to action button went to a broken link. All of those things were like major issues in like they were getting good clicks, they were getting a decent click-through rate on their ads, so the ads were doing their job. The keywords that they were targeting were good keywords, and so it was attracting the right people. However, the website was failing them, and they didn't even know it. They weren't looking at where the traffic was going. They weren't critically thinking. Whoever was running the ad campaign wasn't really looking into that, and thus they were losing potentially a lot of money, and their website was failing them as a direct result. So if you see your ad costs going up over time, probably want to be taking a look at the website or the landing page you're driving to. Okay. And let's talk about first impressions, right? Like, I remember, my mom's always drilling into her heads, first impressions matter. You gotta put your best foot forward when you're first meeting somebody, okay? And your website is the digital first impression of how people see your business, okay? Whether that person got there because they were referred to you and they Googled you, which is like a very common thing that people do. Google calls it the zero moment of truth. No matter how somebody hears about you, they're likely going to Google you. They're going to look at your Google reviews, check out your online reputation. If they like what they see and it kind of passes the sniff test, then they'll click through over to your website. And what do I see when I go to your website? Is it a good representation of who you are, what you do? Does it tell me where you do it, right? Are there compelling differentiators of why I would choose to do business with you over one of your competitors, right? Or am I faced with a website that's loading slowly, that has broken links, that looks like it was designed in one of the first prototype websites on the internet, and hasn't been updated in decades? Um, you got to be careful about that kind of stuff. It is the digital first impression of your business, and if people don't like what they see, they're likely to hit the back button and go somewhere else. Okay, so if you have an outdated, cluttered website, it's going to provide a negative first impression for that potential customer. On the other side of the coin, if you have a modern, professional website uh, that clearly defines who you are, what you do, why somebody would choose you over somebody else, right? Has great testimonials featured from some of your happy clients. Um, Showcases, pictures and videos of jobs and successfully completed, projects that you've done, right? That is more apt to be a productive website for you, and it functions properly. And everything works, right? It loads quickly. It's easy for me to figure out, how do I actually contact these people if I'm happy with what I see, right? Those are all really critical factors to this whole equation. All right. And let's talk about the age of your website, right? Websites have a shelf life, okay? And they can age, they can get older, right? I've seen websites where it was built a long time ago, and a lot has changed about that business. They don't even do some of the services anymore. They've added 5 new services. The pictures are all of old projects that they do much better work now, right? So you gotta. It's a good idea to look at your website at least on an annual or ideally like monthly basis, and ask yourself the question, um, what needs to be updated? Okay, is this a good representation of who we are as a business right now? All right, and if it's not, for whatever reason, you should be thinking about that. But some other factors about website ages, your outdated website, it can affect your search engines, because search engines change. Google's always evolving. Obviously Google has the largest market share of all the search engines in the internet. There's other ones, other search engines too, but they change, they evolve over time. Their formulas of how they rank businesses in the search engines for various keywords changes and evolves over time, right? So if your website was, and we've seen this many, many times, where whomever built the previous website and did SEO, search engine optimization on their website, maybe they use some old school black hat strategies that aren't ideal, right? That we would not recommend, and that are now, like, at the time they were okay, but now Google's like, no, that's not good, and the ranking potential has plummeted as a result. Um, it's time to make some changes and do some updates here. Okay. Another thing is user expectations change, right? Like, what do I want to see when I go to look at a prospective customer's or business's website that I'm considering doing business with? What do I want to see on your website? Okay. What would make it an easier decision for me to be like, okay, check the mental boxes in my head that these guys are good. They look like they've done exactly what I need to have done. Other people have said good things about working with them. They look trustworthy. They look like they could get the job done. And maybe I have some compelling reasons why I'll choose you over somebody else that I learned from going to your website, right? That's what should happen in an ideal world, and then make it easy for me to take that next step and contact you. Okay. As those user expectations change, you need to change your website to match that. Okay. So having a good pulse on what's going on with those users and making sure you're staying up to speed with that is important. And technology, most importantly, changes. Okay. This is something that we see all the time, where somebody's built their website on a very outdated platform, or is built on a platform that they don't even own, right? Or it's like an old, like we saw this with a website that we audited the other day. Fine looking website, but talking to the owner of the business, one of the issues that plagues them is the site was just always breaking. All these things, like a nightmare to do any updates to the site, because every time they touched anything, because it was built on this old programming language, it would just break all the time. It was fragile as Humpty Dumpty sitting up on the wall. There's better solutions now. Okay, there's easier ways to do it. Even a lot of websites built on WordPress, which is like 35% of all the websites on the internet are built on WordPress, which is a great platform. We work on WordPress all the time. Even then, like older websites that were based on themes, all right, those theme developers maybe aren't supporting that theme anymore. It has created vulnerabilities, into the website because the theme hasn't been updated, or maybe the current host isn't updating plugins, etc. But that technology changed, and they didn't keep up with those changes, and it made updating the site or keeping it functioning a very big challenge, right? So that's why sometimes updating it and moving it to a better design, better under the hood technology is a good idea. Okay. So some things to keep in mind with website age, right? And your performance, the website performance impacts everything. It affects your search engine optimization rankings, how you show up in the search engines. It affects conversion rates of how how many visitors visit your site and how many are taking that next step to either email you, to fill out a contact form, or to call you to get a quote or an estimate, right? It can affect your pay-per-click advertising costs, like in Google Ads. It can affect your lead flow dramatically. So your performance of your website affects all those things. I was talking to a young business owner the other day. We met with him, gave him some simple things to update on his website. He implemented those, and I saw him again 30 days later. He got one of the biggest leads of his life because of one of the updates that he made to the website on my advice. And he wasn't even a paying customer yet. I just gave him this advice. He wasn't ready to work with us. He did it, kudos to him. He actually implemented that, and he saw a massive uptick and had the biggest at bat he's ever had for his business. So he was pretty excited about that. So it can impact lead flow like to a dramatic way. And lead flow is the lifeblood of a business. You've got to have good lead flow coming in all the time. Otherwise, things go south. All right. And let's talk about core web vitals, right? So this is a Google-based terminology side of things. But it looks at a few different things, like your loading, the loading speed, the LCP, the INP, the responsiveness, like how responsive is your website, and then the visual stability of your website, right? Basically, we're looking at your website speed, all right? And when Google's comparing your website speed to your competitor's website speed, you can get an edge over your competition just by having, doing a better job on your core web vitals and making sure you're checking all these boxes and that things are looking really good. All right. So website speed matters, like when we host our client websites, we're on a Google cloud-based server called Kinsta. It's lightning fast. There's redundancies in place. Website speed matters. And there's a lot you can do under the hood of the website to make it load faster as well. That's a mistake we see a lot of people have. Like maybe they have visually impressive websites, but they've taken a massive hit on their website speed. As a result of that, there's ways that you can fix that up, tighten that up, and improve loading speeds and loading times and have a better user experience, frankly. Okay. So don't sleep on core web vitals. And then the big mistake, right? And we see this all the time. And the number of times I've seen this, and it has led to a downturn in business because of how it was done by somebody not knowing what they didn't know, was huge. And this is the mistake. A lot of businesses will jump straight to a full website redesign of their business, okay? With a new marketing company. And they'll just kind of go over and be like, okay, we had this website. I don't really like the look of it. Let's rebuild a whole new website. And then the mistake that we've seen, like if the web company doesn't map out all your current URLs, doesn't actually think and determine and have a conversation with you and do some SEO research and figure out what are we ranking for currently, what do we want to keep ranking for, what pages are ranking for those keywords, and how do we maintain those rankings, okay? Because if you do this the wrong way, and I'll tell you a story about how that was done. We've seen this done repeatedly the wrong way. We have a client that we had to come in and rescue. They had probably 5 years prior to working with us, they had a website redesign by somebody else. And before then, they were crushing it. They were ranking for everything. They had a very large website. It was old, but it was working. The thing, even though it was a beast, it had a lot of good content, a lot of good pages. The new marketing company that redesigned it like 5 years ago didn't pay any attention to the SEO, the rankings, like what pages were ranking, the XML sitemap of the current site, and they just rebuilt a whole new site with all new page URLs and everything. Okay, they lost. Their rankings went like this, boop, and dropped through the floor, and it majorly impacted their business because of how this was done. They didn't need a full website redesign. They needed to update it. They needed a strategic fix, right? You can update the look and feel of a website without completely fully redesigning it. Okay. The nice thing about how we build sites nowadays, right? Like we'll build a site on a really good platform on WordPress with Elementor. But if you want to change the look and feel, the outward appearance of the website, we can change anything on it. We don't have to start over nowadays. Like we just take what we've got and make it better or dial in the design. Okay. Um, Jumping to a full redesign can be a really dangerous idea if done improperly. Okay. So a smarter approach is this. Like number one is to actually audit the website. Okay. They get in under the hood, poke around, identify the bottlenecks, what's working, what's missing, what's next. Then we optimize it. Okay. Like what can we fix? Can we fix what we have here? And then how do we start scaling? How do we start ranking for new opportunities, new keywords, getting more traffic, more leads, doing a better job of explaining to Google who you guys are, what you do, and geographically where you do it, right? This is typically a much smarter approach, but a lot of people are lazy. Everything looks like a hammer to a nail, if you've ever heard that saying. And if you talk to the wrong agency, they're just going to be like, oh, yeah, we got to redesign the website, right? Without first understanding what's actually working, what's missing, and then what would actually be a good, smart next step. That's the way we do it. Okay, we approach it this way. Starting with an audit, identifying those bottlenecks, optimizing what needs to be optimizing, and then figuring out how to scale it from there. So be careful, like before you make a decision. Probably have a couple conversations before you take that next step and jump in to the pool from there. So yeah, and the time I've seen this happen before. We've come in and rescued so many people, like doing a full redesign versus an optimization. We had a law firm client, right, that paid an agency for a full redesign, and on average, like a full redesign could take anywhere from 8 to 16 weeks. For these guys, they had been sitting on this project, and it wasn't all the agency's fault. I'll be clear on that. But the website redesign took years. Like they still hadn't launched it, right? Because when we started working with them, like the office manager found out that they had started this website redesign with this other agency, and it just got stalled and had been stuck in limbo for 3 years, even though they paid for it, right? So if you do it the wrong way and you don't have somebody that can help guide you through this process, and that's why starting with the audit is a much better idea. It could take a really long time, and I've seen even some agencies, they tell you it takes months to redesign and rebuild the website. That's ridiculous. It should not take that long, right? And that's why sometimes a strategic optimization that can only take like 2 to 6 weeks. It targets fixes. You get faster results, and it's way more efficient. Okay, so oftentimes you don't need to throw the baby out with the bathwater. You just need a strategic, fix and get this thing going. Okay, so what high performance sites do is they load fast. They're mobile friendly. They have clear messaging. They make it easy to convert. Like, how do I contact you? Like, what is the next step if I want to contact you? And make it easy. Okay. That's what a good website should do. And that's what we do for our clients. So the real question is, is your website an asset or is it a liability? I've heard business owners tell me, oh, don't. I heard this from a guy at a networking meeting. He's like, he was telling people, somebody asked him what the URL of his website. He's like, oh, it's blah, blah, blah.com. But don't go look at my website. It's not like a good representation of who we are. I'm kind of embarrassed about it. Right? Like, we need to fix that, man. Your website should be generating leads for you. It should be an asset that you own. And I'll touch on that real quickly. The number of times I've talked to business owners that don't actually own their own website is way too often. Okay. You need to own your own website. Okay. If you're working with a company and they own your website, that's a terrible, terrible position to be in. And especially if you're investing extra money into search engine optimization, you're paying somebody else to create an asset or build up an asset that you don't own. That's a bad idea. I've seen it end bad 100% of the time. All right. The only other option is keep paying them forever for an asset that you don't own. Okay. And you're more entrenched with them. It's not a good place to be. You need to own the asset for your business, and it should be a productive asset that's generating leads and customers for you. Okay. If your current website isn't doing that, it's not an asset, it's a liability. And we need to take a look at that. Okay. So, what we can do for you, I invite you to do so. We can do a website performance audit. We'll analyze your current site. We'll fix what matters, optimize it for better results, and then we can figure out how to scale it. Figure out what's working, what's missing, and then what's next, and help you, pop things up to the next level. Okay. So if you're open, if you learned something from this, you got some value out of this presentation, I invite you to book a meeting with me, yours truly, Kyle Battis from New Hampshire Strategic Marketing. You just go to our website, NH Strategic Marketing. On the website, there'll be a link to book a meeting with yours truly. And then what we can do is we can chat, gather some information, probably do a more in-depth audit, figure out what we got going on, what we're working with, and then, help you come up with a customized plan specific for you, your business, your goals, to help you pop it up to the next level. So hope to be talking with you soon. Have a great day. Thanks for watching.